On Tuesday, May 6th, the latest spoilers from The Bold and the Beautiful revealed a tear-filled visit from Steffy that would shock Hope, while Liam would face a harsh new reality. At the cliffside house, Steffy did her best to convince Liam that he had to come clean with Hope about his dire health condition. Though Liam initially became agitated and insisted that he was handling things his own way, he eventually softened as their conversation progressed, and he comforted Steffy over the grim situation they were facing. As the conversation unfolded, it became apparent that Liam was not fully ready to confront the heartbreaking truth of his diagnosis. Steffy, however, was deeply struggling with the thought of losing Liam. The fear of watching him deteriorate weighed heavily on her, and she found herself unwilling to accept that this could truly be the end. At first, Liam was equally in denial about the severity of his illness. However, as time passed, his perspective began to shift. He seemed more concerned with ensuring that his loved ones, particularly Steffy and Hope, would be okay after his passing, which showed a stark transformation in his attitude toward the inevitable. Steffy had always been fiercely protective of Liam, and the thought of losing him shook her to her core. Her fear was not just of the illness itself, but of facing a life without him. She tried to find a way to keep him around, to make him fight harder, but deep down, she knew it was becoming more and more unlikely that he would survive this battle. While Steffy's emotions were running high, she was also trying to be pragmatic. She understood that time was of the essence, and she feared that if Liam didn't take action soon, it might be too late to make things right. In the course of their conversation, Liam began to come to terms with his prognosis. Though he still clung to his desire to keep Hope in the dark, the weight of the situation started to change his mind. The once optimistic man, always the peacemaker, was now forced to deal with the reality that his life would be coming to an end much sooner than he ever expected. His desire to protect Hope from the painful truth began to wane, and he found himself seriously considering the possibility that she needed to know what was really going on. Despite his reservations, Liam started to acknowledge that Steffy and Hope would need each other in the coming days. With his life hanging in the balance, Liam became increasingly desperate to ensure that the women he cared about would be able to support one another through the immense heartache they were about to face. He even entertained the idea of letting the painful truth come to light, as he feared that leaving Hope in the dark might cause even more pain in the long run. As he pondered his options, Liam's resolve faltered. He considered asking Steffy to break the news to Hope on his behalf. The thought of seeing Hope's devastated expression, knowing that he had hidden the truth from her for so long, was something Liam couldn't bear. He figured that if Steffy delivered the news, it would be easier on him. He didn't want to see Hope's grief firsthand, not when he was already struggling with his own emotions. Steffy, however, was torn. She understood Liam's desire to shield Hope from the truth, but at the same time, she was growing increasingly frustrated with the secrecy. She knew that Hope would need to be prepared for what was coming, and she didn't want to hold back. It was clear that Steffy cared deeply for Liam, but she also realized that Hope needed to be in the loop. It was a decision that weighed heavily on her, and she struggled to determine what the right course of action would be. By the time Steffy arrived at Brooke's house, Hope was already on edge. The tension in the air was palpable, and Hope couldn't help but feel that something was off. When Steffy showed up unannounced, Hope was immediately struck by the look on her face. Steffy was clearly distressed, and Hope couldn't help but wonder what had brought her to her doorstep. What followed would be a heart-wrenching conversation that would change everything for Hope. Steffy wasted no time in getting to the point. She told Hope that Liam's condition had taken a turn for the worse, and the prognosis was grim. Hope was stunned, unable to fully process the gravity of what Steffy was saying. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of the information. She couldn't believe it. This wasn't the man she knew, the man who had always been strong and optimistic. But now everything had changed. Hope's emotions took over, and she found herself struggling to hold back tears. As Steffy continued to explain, Hope realized just how much she had been unaware of in recent months. She had been so wrapped up in her own world, so focused on her own struggles, that she hadn't noticed the signs that Liam was battling something far more serious than anyone had let on. Hope felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for not recognizing sooner what Liam was going through. She had been so consumed by her own fears and insecurities that she had failed to see the pain he was enduring. Now, it seemed, it was too late to make up for lost time. Despite the shock and heartbreak, Hope tried to stay strong for Liam. She knew that Steffy needed her support, and she couldn't allow herself to break down in front of her. Steffy, though, was already asking Hope to help her with something important. She wanted Hope to convince Liam to go to Paris for treatment. But Hope's willingness to help wasn't the issue. Liam's condition was far worse than anyone had imagined, and the thought of him enduring a long flight seemed like a cruel twist of fate. Hope immediately agreed to help, though she had no idea if Liam would even consider going to Paris. The idea of leaving for treatment seemed almost impossible, especially when it meant putting Liam through the strain of air travel. However, Steffy's plea made it clear that they had to try. The stakes were high, and if there was even the slightest chance that Liam could be saved, they had to take it. But what Hope and Steffy didn't know was that Liam's condition had already deteriorated so much that traveling could cause even more harm. In a shocking twist, Liam experienced a seizure mid-flight, which forced the plane to return to town for an emergency landing. The news of the incident sent shockwaves through the family, and it became clear that Liam was in even worse shape than anyone had anticipated. Liam was rushed to the hospital, where doctors confirmed that his condition had worsened to the point where he had fallen into a deep coma. It was uncertain when, if ever, he would wake up. The situation was dire, and the reality of the situation began to sink in for everyone who cared about him. Hope, Steffy, and the rest of the Forrester family were left in a state of shock, struggling to accept the new reality. The man they had all loved and relied on was now fighting for his life, and no one knew what the future would hold. The Bold and the Beautiful continues to stir up drama as its characters struggle with love, heartbreak, and the harsh realities of their tangled relationships. On the latest episode, viewers are gripped by an intense turn of events that further complicates the already fractured lives of Brooke Logan, Ridge Forrester, and the others who orbit them. Brooke, who has long been at the center of the emotional turmoil in the Forrester family, is finding herself in an increasingly desperate place. As her marriage to Ridge teeters on the brink of collapse, Brooke's resilience is being tested like never before. She has exhausted every avenue she could think of to save her relationship, and yet Ridge remains distant, uninterested, and seemingly unmoved by her efforts to reconcile. Throughout their tumultuous marriage, Ridge has continuously shown his loyalty to his family and his company, often sidelining Brooke in favor of his own ambitions. But now, the tension between them is thicker than ever, and Brooke's efforts to bring Ridge back have become futile. It seems as if she's reaching the end of her rope. Ridge's repeated indifference to her pleas has taken a toll on her, and her sense of hope is slipping away. It's during this vulnerable time that Deacon Sharp, the wild card of the group, makes his reappearance in Brooke's life. Deacon, who has never been shy about his feelings for Brooke, has his own complex history with her, marked by both passion and turmoil. He's always been somewhat of a rogue, a figure who doesn't fit neatly into the Forrester family's polished image. Deacon has a long-standing resentment toward Ridge, both for his treatment of Brooke over the years and his more recent behavior toward Hope. Deacon sees Ridge as a man who has taken advantage of Brooke's kindness and commitment, and he harbors a deep disdain for him. However, Deacon's feelings go beyond just anger. He's also concerned for Brooke's well-being, and his frustration over her situation drives him to make a bold suggestion. Sitting down with Brooke, Deacon offers an uncharacteristically pointed piece of advice. He's never been one to sugarcoat things, and this conversation is no exception. With a look of genuine concern on his face, Deacon suggests that perhaps it's time for Brooke to move on from Rich. He urges her to consider her options and stop clinging to a relationship that has been marked by constant betrayal and neglect. Think about another man, Deacon says, his tone softer now, though still tinged with urgency. Brooke is shocked by his words, and she doesn't quite know how to respond at first. The idea of letting go of Ridge, even temporarily, is unimaginable for her. She's always believed in the strength of their bond, despite the challenges they've faced. But Deacon, ever the realist, suggests two possible suitors. Bill Spencer, someone Brooke has been involved with in the past, and Nick Marone, a man she shares a history with as well. Deacon doesn't mince words. He doesn't think highly of Bill, but he also doesn't see him as the worst option. Nick, on the other hand, is someone Deacon respects more, and he feels that Brooke might find a better connection with him. Brooke listens carefully to Deacon's words, her mind racing with the implications of his advice. It's not that she hasn't considered moving on, but the idea of being with someone else seems so foreign to her after everything with Ridge. She feels lost, unsure of where to turn next. But as Deacon continues to push the idea, something inside her stirs. Could it really be time to think about another man? Is she ready to give up on her relationship with Ridge, a man she's fought so hard to keep in her life? The suggestion shakes Brooke to her core, but it also brings a tiny glimmer of possibility. For the first time in a long while, she wonders if she might have a future outside of Ridge, if there might be another path waiting for her. Meanwhile, as Brooke grapples with her emotions, Taylor Hayes, her longtime rival, is experiencing a very different reality. Taylor has always held a certain level of confidence, but recently, her self-assurance has only grown stronger. Her relationship with Ridge, while far from perfect, seems to have a stability that Brooks has lacked for years. Taylor is no stranger to heartache and struggle, but unlike Brooke, she doesn't seem willing to let go of Ridge just yet. Taylor is determined to stay in the picture, and she has a sense of clarity that Brooke now envies. Brooke's distress and uncertainty contrast sharply with Taylor's confidence. As Brooke faces the bitter truth that Ridge may never come back to her, Taylor remains resolute, firmly planted in her belief that Ridge is the man she's meant to be with. While Brooke is consumed with thoughts of losing him, Taylor feels increasingly optimistic about her future with him. Brooke, on the other hand, continues to find herself in a downward spiral. Her attempts to win Ridge back have fallen flat. She has begged, she has pleaded, and she has even thrown herself into their shared family business to try and restore some semblance of stability. Yet none of it has been enough. She even told Ridge that the fashion community wanted them back together, but Ridge, as always, remained indifferent to her pleas. The more she pushed, the more he pulled away. Now, as her hopes fade into the background, Brooke is left to wonder if it's time to truly let go. As if to underline her sense of helplessness, Brooke's once vibrant connection to Ridge seems irreparably damaged. Her future with him is unclear, and her options are narrowing. In stark contrast, Taylor's renewed sense of optimism only serves to highlight the growing distance between Brooke and Ridge. Taylor feels confident that she and Ridge are heading toward a future together, while Brooke is left questioning if her marriage was ever truly meant to be. Adding to the complexity of the situation, viewers are getting ready for the return of Nick Marone, a character whose presence has always disrupted the status quo. Nick, who has a strong connection to both Brooke and Ridge, is set to make his return to the storyline in mid-June. With his arrival, the dynamics between Brooke, Ridge, and Taylor are poised to become even more complicated. As Nick re-enters the picture, he could potentially offer Brooke the very alternative that Deacon suggested, someone who could make her feel valued and loved once again. But the question remains, will Brooke choose to open her heart to Nick, or will she continue to chase a fading dream with Ridge? As the drama unfolds, the stage is set for an emotional showdown, with Brooke at the center of it all. The future is uncertain, and for Brooke, the stakes have never been higher. Will she find a way to move on from Ridge, or will she cling to the last vestiges of hope for their relationship? As the story continues to develop, only time will tell how this intricate web of love, betrayal, and heartache will ultimately unravel. The bold and the beautiful keeps viewers on the edge of their seats as the characters navigate their complicated relationships and the shifting tides of fate. For Brooke, the future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: she's at a crossroads, and the choices she makes next will define the rest of her life.